All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone's doing good. Facebook's coming up and Instagram should be going. All right, sweet. So it looks like we are live on both ends. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Tea with Doug G. My name is Doug Gooden, in case you didn't realize that. And if you're on Facebook, you can see him. I'm going to get him on Instagram here in just a second. My guest for the evening is going to be Mr. Michael Ruiz of Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies fame. Yeah, Mike, if you can just kind of reset or re-scroll your Instagram so I can get you on here.
Yeah, let's get that set up.
So yeah, as per usual, technology is the constant struggle of Tea with Doug G. All right, there we go.
There we go.
All
Looks
right.
like we're getting there.
All right, sweet. So let me see if I can see you, Mike. We're adding you in. All right, good deal. All right, so what's up, Mike? Hope you're doing good, man. Yeah. So Mike, why don't you just take a second, introduce yourself, tell the folks what you do, all that jazz.
Sure thing. So I'm Michael, as you said. From what I gather, everyone here would probably know me most from Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies. I'm sure Doug has talked about it maybe once or twice throughout this.
A handful of times.
Occasionally. And so I did that for a long time. I'm helping out with this new thing called Vitor Media. I'm sure we're going to talk about it. I am a former film student. I am a marketer, ghostwriter at one point, amateur filmmaker. I do a lot of weird creative things, essentially. And up until recently, I lived out in Athens. That's how I met Doug and the rest of them, though I've recently relocated. So I'm out here in Marietta, so a little far, but still kicking, still helping out.
Yeah, not bad. And with the freelancing writer and artistic things that you do, you're very good at. You're also very good at making parody songs and then also just comedic music in general.
Right.
You and our mutual friend, Mr. Ford Weaver, excel at that.
I may or may not have been the co-author of a as of yet unfinished 5-part pentology concerning the battles between robots and men called The Robotic Uprising of 3077, I believe.
I am eagerly awaiting parts 2 through 5.
There are several parts to come, definitely.
Yeah. Hey everyone who's checking in. Good to see y'all. Well, Mike, let's get right into the questions, man. Let's not waste any time. So first things first, not really a question, just something to kind of stroke both of our egos.
Down.
Mutual friend of ours, Miss Haley Vaughn. Haley says that she said that I looked really sharp, but Mike, to your credit, you also look very sharp.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, Haley. And then kind of in that same vein, our mutual friend of the show, fellow jerk who talked about movies, Tristan Webb. Tristan pointed out that Mike in particular, you have a great butt. Now Mike, I'll go on and tell you, I think Tristan's right on that end. I think it's a quality asset that you have.
I'm flattered, but have no further comment. But thank you.
Good to know.
Hi to you, Tristan.
Yeah. Thanks, Tristan. And then also another question from Tristan. This was actually asked last week, but Mike, I want your opinion on it as well. Tristan wants to know mahogany or cherry. Which do you go with?
Okay. I'm assuming he's talking about wood. And in that case, I'm going to go with cherry. I think it's a really good look. I like the brown and red. That's where it's at.
Very nice. Last week, Wade and I went with mahogany. But, to each his own. All right. Now, Now, Mike, going on to another question. We both have talked about how we kind of made each other and really became great friends through our podcast that we co-host together. Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies.
Gotta get the plug
And
in.
yeah. And Mike, today for all of our followers on the Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies page, there was a change. It was no longer called Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies. It's instead called Vitor Media. So our good friend Ben Tankersley, he wants to know what's with this Vitor Media thing.
Okay, so yes, as Doug has covered, and as you guys saw, if you followed the page, I made a bit of an announcement on there. We are closing down the Some Jerks chapter. It was a good ride. It was, what was it, 2 years, a year and a half? It was a while.
Right at 2 years.
Right at 2 years, and
100 episodes.
we had always said that was not a goodbye forever. That was a goodbye for now. That for now is now over. We are moving into the next stage, which is something we call Vitor Media. It's going to be not just one podcast, but several. I think we're going to try to aim for 3 at launch and grow it from there. Essentially, what we're trying to do is make something that can be kind of a future proofing of the brand. To talk in corporate terms, we have the show that you know and love, the weekly review show that is still happening, that is coming back. We also have a show I've been working on that's a little more movie news. Doug's got something you may or may not know about. And yeah, you're looking at it. It's this.
Yes.
So everything is kind of moving under one moniker. What we're hoping to do is kind of bring you guys entertainment, film news, TV stuff, all in a place where it can grow and thrive. And we're not just kind of pigeonholed, not to be too mean to some jerks, but kind of pigeonholed into just being jerks about movies. Now we can branch out and hopefully talk about some things in more broader detail. So our little podcast is growing up.
Yeah, and like Mike said, we're gonna have a couple projects open at launch, 2 podcasts, and then one not really podcast, but it's Tea with Doug G. This is gonna be under Vitor Media. And also, in case anyone's wondering if like we're selling out or anything, we're 100% not. This is all stuff that we've come up with.
Yeah, it's the same. It's us 5. It's the same group. We are just building something that we want to last for a while. So
yeah, and we'll keep talking a little bit about that as we go throughout this conversation that we're having. But for right now, kind of to bounce back, ask some non-Vitor related questions. Our mutual friend Brandon Revis reached out and asked the question for the two of us: how far down do you think that Disney will drag Star Wars?
So that's a really good question. If you listen to the podcast, Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies, shameless plug, and you know, whenever I go off on Disney, I'm going to be going off for a very long time. To that point, Mr. Revis, I think that they'll go as far down as is profitable. I don't think there's really a nadir of terrible quality that you're looking for. I think it's just we're going to keep making movies until we can't profit. What's your answer to that, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right on the head. In terms of your big budget movies, the things that Disney's really going to put all of their effort, all of their manpower behind, it's going to be things that they think will please the most people. Doesn't matter if it's the hardcore fans, doesn't matter if it's new fans, whatever will get the most people in the seats to watch it, they're going to put the most money behind. Now, I don't think that means that we are completely devoid of quality Star Wars content for the foreseeable future, because, you know, Dave Filoni knocked it out of the park with the final season of the Clone Wars. Jon Favreau did a phenomenal job with The Mandalorian, which I still have not watched all of.
Really? It's not that long. Goodness.
Yeah, I know. It was a combination of school and then quarantine, and it was just not high on my list of things to finish up. But I will finish. I will finish it at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really sad thing. To quote Jeremy Johns, who is a film reviewer that I love to watch, he said, you know, Star Wars is no longer that special, sacred thing. It is truly something to be owned by a conglomeration, or a conglomerate.
It's a part of the brand, if you
Yeah,
will.
it's a brand now.
Yeah. And
Uh,
it always was a brand, which I think is kind of funny because we talk about Star Wars and we talk about it like it was this rare scarcity, and in terms of the actual numerical films it was, right? But you can't talk about Star Wars without talking about merchandising. It's the inventor of it, you know?
yeah,
So kind of going off to that point, like I think it's more so now that the final piece of the puzzle there, the scarcity of the episodic films is gone. Now it's just all the brand, and it's not just, well, it's mostly the brand, but the movies are at least somewhat tactful in their release schedules. Now it's the brand. It's the mouse wants you to consume, so better
yeah.
start.
Great question, Brandon. Kind of something to bring the mood down.
All is
Something
lost.
to
The
bring,
Monopoly's rule us all. Thank you for coming.
yeah, something to bring the mood back up. Another question from Ben. Ben asked, "What's your favorite D&D story?" Mike, you clearly are way more experienced in D&D than I am. Which, okay, if you somehow don't know what D&D is, it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's a role playing game. A lot of fun. Highly
Good
recommend.
time. Highly recommend.
But yeah, I mean, Mike, you have much more experience than I do. I do have a favorite D&D story, but I'll let you go on and take the lead on this one.
I think I'm getting this one mainly because I typically dungeon master. So that's for those of you who don't play Dungeons and Dragons, that's kind of the person who's orchestrating the story. So man, I don't even know where to start with D&D. I guess the most interesting story is I developed out this one shot, which is a very fancy term for just the where you play through the whole story in a night. And I was sitting around bored watching YouTube videos trying to come up with an idea. And I was watching that Shia LaBeouf live thing. You guys have probably all seen it, the actual Cannibal Shia LaBeouf. Completely, it's lunacy. But I thought it would be really funny to frame a murder mystery, kind of like haunted house sort of narrative, and then halfway through, which for D&D is like 2 hours in, 3 hours in, reveal that it's Shia LaBeouf. I've done it a few times, and every single time I do it, I feel like I almost get hit. I get like someone's going to murder me for it, but it's a riot. It's great. I highly recommend it. If you look up D&D one shot Shia LaBeouf, it wasn't my idea. Other people have done it. Try it. It's great.
Yeah. I have not been in on one of those one shots, but I've heard the tales. I think my
You'll
favorite
get cursed out
story.
pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. I think my favorite D&D. I can't talk right now. My favorite D&D story is this campaign I'm currently playing with again our mutual friend Elijah. Um, and my character Schmebulok, he is he is a gnome. He's a rock gnome, a bard. So you know he's kind of charming, a performative individual, kind of sneaky, and he's a master of disguise. And his preferred disguise is that of a busty servant wench. So we've been playing this campaign all summer, all throughout quarantine. So we've been doing it via Discord and Zoom. And one night I wanted to use my skill of disguise, and I wanted to use my preferred disguise of a busty servant wench. So you know, I kind of turned off my camera for just a little bit, and when I popped it back on, I had like my shirt as like a crop top and just my man cleavage just above just above the shirt, and that was my busty servant winch.
Beautiful.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, gentlemen of a sizable girth such as myself, we do develop some very pronounced man cleavage and man boobs. So yeah, that was
That's just you taking advantage of the situation. That's
exactly
developing the perfect character. I don't see any
exactly.
problem with that.
You know, it's thinking 5 or 6 moves in advance.
You pitched that to me. I don't know if you remember, but we were when I was still out in Athens. You told me this story because I knew I wasn't going to be involved in that, and then you did the whole man cleavage thing, and I was like, this is something. This is special.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question, Ben. All right. I'm gonna throw it back to another Vitor Media question. Fan of the show, fan of Some Jerks. Haley Vaughn again. She asked, "Will you still have really cool artwork as your logo?"
So I'm assuming that's in reference to the Some Jerks logo, which had all the people on it, the nice design. Yes. So the V logo is what I've been calling it, that you see now on all of our pages, is just the logo for the overarching brand, the brand. And so everything else is going to have its own branding. My podcast, Tea with Doug G, I think is going to get a rebrand. And then as of yet, hiding the title in this one, the weekly show, will also have its own brand. So the cool logos are coming, and they will be coming back, rest assured. We actually were just talking about that today, getting all that stuff planned out. Takes a while to build, but it's all going to be ready, August 31st.
Yeah. And I'll go on and tell everyone who's watching tonight, the Tea with Doug G logo, you will get to see it by the end of this week.
I want to see it. I don't think I've seen it. I want to see it.
Yeah, it's gonna be very, very amazing. I've commissioned a very good friend of mine to do the logo, and I think y'all will be very pleased. So yeah, once again, great question, Haley. All right, so I'm going to kind of take us a little bit back. Ask a question from, again, a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Elijah Walls. I don't know why I just blanked on his last name for a second.
Took a second.
But either way, so Elijah says this is his burning question. Mike, to what extent should we separate the art from the artist, as they say?
Wow. Okay. This is a big one. I'll try to be brief. Generally, when you're trying to separate the art from the artist, you have to consider auteur theory. That's the concept that a piece of media is wholesale attributed to the contribution, there's the word, of one single person. For instance, Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino, Jaws, Steven Spielberg. We attribute most of the success and the content of the film to this one person. Pertaining to death of the author in film, that's when that really matters, right? So you have a big thing right now, just off the top of my head, you have the Harry Potter film series and the book series, of course, which started that. The author, I won't get too far into it, but it said a whole bunch of things, a lot of which people are really uncomfortable with. Mainly political views, and in some cases things concerning marginalized groups. So the question of death of the author therein being, do we still embrace somebody's work and embrace their content and consume their content and give them money, for lack of a better term, when we don't agree with what they do as a person? So it's, if we separate J.K. Rowling in this instances, her thought process and her political views from her work, that case is complicated because J.K. Rowling is continuing to make content. That's when I think death of the author is valid. If you have a fundamental disagreement with someone's political or personal viewpoints to the point where you think that it is actively bringing harm to the world, I think death of the author is valid in that case. Or not valid, rather. To invalidate death of the author means the author's opinions still matter. So that would mean you don't consume their media, or you do not give them money because you don't support them. When we're talking about someone that's already literally dead in Death of the Author, I think we can enjoy things in more of a context of understanding that times might have been different. Not to disparage what's right and wrong now, but like times might have been different. So there's a bit of a gradient there. So yeah, you have that to consider, or if they're not actively making stuff, or if they just won't profit anymore, right? So if you buy a C.S. Lewis book and you disagree with C.S. Lewis, he is not profiting; he is dead. So it's a little more nuanced in that case. So I think it really just depends to really get all the way around and spiral around Elijah's question there. So for Death of the Author, I think if the author's alive and they're still working, I think it is kind of morally reprehensible to completely say, like Death of the Author, completely remove yourself from that. But if we're talking about older works where the people involved are either no longer profiting or no longer with us, then I think you can kind of make a better argument in that case.
Yeah. This is why I love having Mike on, because he's much more well-spoken than I am.
I stumbled through that, but I mean,
it's okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think that's a very well articulated answer. So very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question, Elijah.
Yeah, I thought it was a quality answer. Okay. So kind of a more lighthearted question. So Ben asks, how does it feel to eat a cake of your own face? And oddly enough, Mike, I know this question was directed at you, but I also can answer this question.
Really?
Yes.
That I would like to hear.
All right. Yeah. So last year I was working a summer camp, Wind Shape Camps, and traveled 9 different states. That's not true. 7 different states, I think. Bottom line, bunch of different states over the entire summer. And, got to meet a bunch of different people in the communities. We were working with churches in the area, so got to meet all of the church staff, got to work very closely with them. And our 8th week in Midlothian, Texas, if anybody from Midlothian just happens to watch this,
Like
Miss Jana or Miss Gracie, if y'all happen to watch this, what's up? Love y'all's church. Y'all are awesome. But they made for us, for our entire team, they found a picture of me doing a split on Facebook. It was the first split I've ever done. And they found that picture and they took the picture and printed it on the cake and said, sorry to see you split on the cake. So I have eaten both my face, my legs, every part of my body, which sounds really terrible.
That could have been better phrased, but yeah, that's okay.
It was a delicious cake. Yeah, it's kind of fulfilling to eat a cake that has your persona on it or your face on it.
Right, yeah. I guess to answer that question, I would have to rewind a bit. Several years ago, myself and a friend of mine kind of developed this inside joke where we would rapidly scale up in terms of weirdness birthday presents. So at first it was Photoshop photos of us with our favorite bands. Eventually it became like I have a mug with the worst picture of myself physically possible on it. I made her a poster involving her whole family into it. Sorry to the Jetter family. For instance, I got this out. I got a standee of myself shrugging. That's a thing. And this year, my gift to them, my friend and her husband, was to bake a cake out of her face. And so we had so much extra fondant and cake, we all baked faces of our own cake. So I actually cannot tell you what it's like to eat my own face because I haven't done it yet. It's in the kitchen. It's made out of fondant, and honestly, fondant's kind of gross, and I don't want to eat it. So
You're right, it is.
yeah, my assumption is that it's not going to be a good time.
Mm.
That'll probably be how it plays out. But yeah, fondant, for those of you who haven't had it, kind of tastes like cookie dough with a hint of sugar. That's about what you're looking at in terms of the consistency.
Yeah. Well, for what's worth, the cakes looked delicious.
Oh yeah, they had that down.
Yeah.
that was solid.
Well, good deal. Again, throwing it back to some Vitor Media questions. So once again, Haley asked, what inspired this new name? The new name Vitor Media.
Right. So for Vitor, a lot of what we wanted to do is come up with something very general and almost nonsensical. My thought process with Vitor was, I don't know if I was even the one that came up with it, but to me, what it is it just kind of reminded me of Vater, which is like what Vader was named after, and Darth Vader, which just means father. And so that kind of works as the parent company. You have Vitor, which is just kind of Vater with some misspellings in there. So I don't know if anything inspired the name. You can attest to this, Doug. You were there for this.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think we just kind of spitballed some really random things.
You guys should have heard some of the other ones. They were we had some, we went through some names. There was some focus testing.
To quote Tristan Webb in the Facebook comments, we wanted something that didn't make any sense.
That's right. That's about right.
To a certain point, I think we kind of wanted to poke fun at these digital media groups that have these quote unquote like epic important names, but don't really mean anything. So we took a name that doesn't really mean anything for a very small group.
Ran with it. Just went.
Yep. We just ran with it.
August 31st. Mark your calendar. Shameless plug.
Now, hey, that leads us into this kind of well, I'll wait.
Okay.
so I do have one more question before kind of our last question. So Tristan asks, now Mike, you primarily were a writer for several years.
Yes.
And
yes.
I want to know, what types do you have for budding writers? And to that extent, people who want to create their own art, create something with their name on it that they can put out into the public.
Right. Writing tips is kind of difficult because when you're talking about like a trade and like a skill, it's almost like asking, how do I be a better basketball player? There are certain tips you can go over, but a lot of it's just putting in the work. A lot of people believe that writing is an inherent gift, and while you might be more or less good at the start of it, I don't think that's the case. I think if you put in enough effort and you put in enough time, you can certainly get to a place where you can communicate your ideas well. You can learn the storytelling concepts well. In terms of starting points, if you're looking into fiction writing of any kind, if we're talking screenplays, stage plays, books, anything like that, highly recommend you look into 3-act structure and story circles. One of the more famous ones is Dan Harmon's story circle. You can go with that. Otherwise, you could read The Hero's Journey. You can get a handle of that. There's Hero with 1,000 Faces. That's a really good place to start. Generally speaking, you just want to understand how to tell your beginning, middle, and end in sequence. And then after you have that down, focusing heavily on dialogue is important, because that's kind of where people kind of really screw up, is trying to write dialogue that makes sense. In terms of that, I would just try to focus on putting yourself into the perspectives of your characters. They're not going to talk like you. They are not you. They're different characters. And just say them out loud. Sit there at your computer, say the lines out loud, say the prose out loud, see if it makes sense to you, and write. And honestly, just put in the work and it will improve.
Yeah, and I think you're right on the money with that. To the extent of just how do you start creating art on your own? I mean, my answer to that is just you got to be tenacious. You got to have the tenacity to keep doing it. If there is something that you know you are capable of doing, and you think there's even a slight chance that there's a creative process that could be involved in that, I would say do it. I mean, that's how this show came to be. That's how the podcast came to be. I mean,
Yep, definitely. Stubborn desire to make a thing goes a long way.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, great question, Tristan. So Mike, kind of to wrap us up here, last question. We've talked about some fun stuff, some not okay, well, still fun stuff, but not like light stuff.
Right.
And we've talked about Vitor Media and the future of our group, formerly known as Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies. So, Mike, just to kind of wrap us up, a question from Ben Tankersley. Is the podcast coming back? And what does that look like?
Right. I think, as I mentioned briefly earlier, the podcast is coming back the same, not quite the same, but you're getting a weekly podcast. We are doing reviews that is coming back. While I'm on the subject, I guess I have to admit that it is getting scaled down in terms of how many people are on it. I am unfortunately no longer to be a regular. I'm going to be a guest, but you'll still hear me on there. You're going to hear everyone else that you know on there. We're all going to be doing that, and we're really looking forward to getting that started. That's going to be starting kind of first week of September. Do you want to do the name? Are we doing the name, or are we going to hold back on the name?
I think we should go on, let them know what the name of the show is going to be.
You want to do it or me?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. So our new podcast is going to be called Setting the Skeen. Not setting the scene.
Yep.
Setting the Skeen.
With a K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't know, Skeen is the Greek word for what was basically the backdrop of a theater in ancient Greece. And we took that word, kind of took it to mean something that builds on the foundation of how a story is told, things like that. And we said that's kind of what we do with our podcast already. We set the tone. What should you expect going in? What's the basis of it? What's the story? So, yeah.
We have Setting the Skeen coming out soon. We have Tea with Doug G, and we have my show, not quite yet named. Doug heard a name, but I want to lock that name in. So we got a lot of things in development. There are going to be 3 shows a week. So you have 2 podcasts and a live show. We're also working on building out even more bonus content for people. We have some things in the work in terms of extended support, and we're just really excited to get started, really. You're going to be seeing a little more about that throughout August on the formerly the Some Jerks social media pages. Now have all been converted to Vitor. So if you followed Some Jerks, this continues straight through. You don't have anything to worry about. And we're going to start slowly rolling that out, going out for the full launch on the 31st.
Yep. And just to reiterate what Mike said, Some Jerks Who Talk About Movies, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Ben Tankersley and I, we co-created that. We had a lot of fun, but we wanted to make it bigger and better. And that's what we've done with Vitor Media. We're going to bring you more content. We're going to have a ton of fun. And we're going to talk about movies. We're going to talk about good movies, bad movies.
That's not going away.
In between. Our point scale will probably not be as complicated as it was.
My only regret, I'll put it on record here. My only regret was I didn't go lower with Rise of Skywalker, but that's okay. we'll probably do something else. And for reference, I gave it a -9. So
yeah,
take from that as you will.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for kind of helping me and you as well just really roll out the Vitor Media, kind of explain it to people. Also, just a heads up, if anyone has any questions about it or you're concerned about it, by all means, reach out to us. We're happy to talk about it.
Absolutely. We'll
we
walk you
want
through it.
we want this to be a two-way conversation. So yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on. Did you have a good time?
I had a good time. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, good deal. Just to let everyone know before we close out here, I know I said last week that last week was going to be our last week on Instagram. This week, that's actually true. This is going to be our last week on Instagram.
Sorry.
Like I said, the Tea with Doug G logo will be coming out at the end of this week. And along with that, I will be debuting the Tea with Doug G YouTube channel. So we're still going to go live on Facebook. We're also going to go live on YouTube. So you'll still be able to see it in multiple different ways if you don't have a Facebook. But yeah, thank y'all so much for watching. My name's Doug Gooden, and this has been The Tea. Thank y'all very much, and y'all have a great night. All right, bye.
Thank you.